Pastor Wills, President Clinton, Ambassador Young, Mrs. Billy Suber Aaron, to the children, grandchildren, members of the Aaron family, with whom we share our great loss, but also our great celebration. And to friends who have joined in this service electronically. Mrs. Aaron, you must forgive me, please. I guess COVID-19 does not allow us to sing. But let's stand for a moment, please. Just stand if you feel up to it. Stand where you are. Move your shoulders, and if you want to reach up, do that. Thank you. It's been rich, and it would be great to hear us all singing together. You may be seated. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that brings forth its fruit in its season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. The third verse of the first Psalm of the Bible gives us our image as we think of Henry Hank Aaron, a tree by the river. He shall be like a tree that brings forth its fruit in its season. The tens of thousands of tributes that have come forward over these past few days attest to the fruitfulness of Henry Aaron's life. His fruitfulness, yes, as a ball player, but his fruitfulness on and off the field. His fruitfulness in baseball goes way back in his childhood. I had the pleasure of being at a dinner, an occasion that honored Henry, and one of the speakers was a childhood friend. And he spoke of how the two of them, as boys, played baseball, and he would pitch an old beat-up baseball to Henry, and Henry would use a homemade bat that had been formed from a tree limb, and he'd hit the ball high in a high arch so that it would come down on a nearby barn. And while the ball was in the air, he would run and get on the other side of that barn. And when the ball hit the roof and bounced off, he was there to catch it. His prowess showed even in childhood. And we know that he was only 17 when he became a professional baseball player. But his fruitfulness did not stop with his athletic prowess. Indeed, his achievements after retirement as a businessman were outstanding, are there for us still to see. We see in Hank a lesson, therefore, in fruitfulness, a fruitfulness that results from his excellence, his consistency of performance. And he shall be like a tree whose leaf shall not wither. Hank certainly had plenty of occasions for the leaves of his tree to wither. We know about his challenges, not only to reach the top as a baseball player, but his challenges because of our social attitudes and structures of segregation. The racial vitriol increased the closer he got to that seemingly unattainable goal of Babe Ruth and the home runs. And the closer he got to breaking that barrier, the more the hatred showed itself. And we know now that Henry was subjected to threats for his life, and that the safety of his family was imperiled. And yet, through all of that, he was fruitful in just doing his job. He let his bat speak for him. And because he did so, we all enjoy a better world, not only in the sports world, but in our society. We learn then, as we remember Henry, we learn something from his courage. And we know that as a tree, his leaf did not wither under pressure. He shall be like a tree. Whatever he does shall prosper. Well, I think our psalmist poet would allow that even the God-fearing life is going to have disappointment and trouble, and perhaps not count on everything to be a success. But in his poetic way, he said everything, whatever he does, he will prosper. But that prosperity, I believe, of which the psalmist wrote, it was not just about physical possessions. It was a prosperity that pointed to the inside, where one becomes prosperous in the soul, even as one lives a life amid turmoil and rejection. Hank would probably be the first one to say that his later blessings after retiring as a player, the prosperity that came to him through his business ventures, he would be the first to say, I'm sure, it was a blessing of God. Similarly, he would have said that whatever he did, he would have to attribute to God in his grace. In his prosperity, he never forgot the poverty of his youth. He never turned his eyes from the needs around him. And then came a new prosperity in his life. He met Billy Suber Williams then. And from their marriage came a new approach to handling modest prosperity. Like two trees, Hank and Billy joined their underground roots as in a mango tree grove, where those trees underneath and out of sight grow together because their roots have been interwoven. And in their union, we see a new and creative way of giving, of organizing their assets to be able to make philanthropic contributions that are extraordinary for a Black couple in our country. They were loyal members of Friendship Baptist Church, and I was privileged to be their pastor when we were in the old building. And as their pastor, I was privy to some of the anonymous gifts that they made, especially at Christmas time, to needy families in our church and in our community. And over the years, that giving developed in a more organized fashion. And as their prosperity grew, their giving grew, so that they were great supporters of Black institutions, like the United Negro College Fund, of which Billy was a principal fundraiser, like Morehouse College or the Morehouse School of Medicine that has been mentioned, to name a few. And then there was the establishment of what I think was their favorite, the Chase the Dream Foundation, which aids children of minority homes in getting an education. And whatsoever he doeth, he shall prosper. Again, a lesson that we see in the tree, Hank Aaron, in handling what little prosperity we may have. And lastly, he shall be like a tree planted by rivers of water. And here's the fundamental feature of the Old Testament tree that is mentioned here, and that we are saying represents one like Henry Aaron. It is planted by moving water, streams that are clear, that give nourishment as well as coolness and refreshment to the living tree. Henry attributed his spiritual grounding to his parents. They taught him and his siblings, he has said, that they should do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That has been my philosophy, he once said. And because he took that fundamental Christian teaching to heart, we have been able to admire in him humbleness, his kindness, his steady courage. Henry was once asked by an interviewer, "How would you like to be remembered?" And he answered not by saying, referring to his home runs or the stats that made him one of the truly great players of all time. He said instead, well, I'd like to be remembered as somebody who helped some kids go to college. Such was his own humility, but his own vision and perception that the future rests within our youth, and the greater exposure they have in their growing up and education, the greater their people and our nation will be. We remember him, yes, for what he did for college kids, but far more than that, he is in our minds and will remain with us. He was a giant redwood in our midst. And in its height, we see his height of character, his high reach of achievement. He was a huge oak around us because he spread out the limbs that showed his concern for fairness and for justice and for raising the economic station of people. He is our lesson in excellence, in courage, in humility, in faith. We thank God for Henry Hank Aaron, our tree by the river. God bless you.